Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. Today we're back out here in the field working on the Junkyard Scout. Today we're going to be knocking out some kind of maintenance items. So I've got a new oil filter, a new canister for that. I've got some oil that's been sitting around. I think it was like Tractor Supply clearance special or something like that. It'll be good enough for the Scout. Found a great deal on some headlight buckets and rings on eBay, so we're going to slap those on. And I've got my coffee can of just random hardware. Also, we might see about knocking them rear brakes loose, see if we get that turning. Doing all this stuff though is just getting us one step closer to having this thing running and driving under its own power. All right, so first thing I want to try and knock out is getting these headlights put back in. It's funny how different, just like wheels and tires make a vehicle look different, when a Jeep or a Scout is missing the headlights, it just totally changes the look. So I'm gonna slap these on. I guarantee it's gonna transform the look of the Scout. All right, so we'll go ahead and try one of these out, make sure it fits. You always run that risk with eBay. But looks like all the holes line up. And these do look like Scout 800 headlights. And of course the headlight bucket, and then there's that retaining ring too. This was a really good deal because I got the whole assembly. Now I just gotta find some hardware to put these on. So when I take apart old stuff or when I'm parting out something, I usually have a coffee can that I throw all the hardware in. So I'm gonna dig through this, see if I can find some screws. There we go. So that's got the headlights, the buckets, and the trim rings put on. I think it looks really good. It makes the vehicle look just way more complete. Less like the Scout that I pulled out of the junkyard. I didn't put the screws in the trim rings. I didn't have screws small enough in my coffee can there, but they seem to clip in really good. They'll hold on for now, and then when I have the right size screws, I'll put them on. So now that we got that knocked out, probably gonna move on to the oil change. I'm guessing the oil in this thing has not been changed in a while. It looks really funny on the dipstick. So I'll go grab the pan, drop the drain plug on this thing, and we'll get this old oil out and get some new oil in it. Here's y'all a view of the drain plug. So it does have some stuff in it. Actually a lot of stuff. It looks more like it's gunk. I don't really see any glitter in it. So I think that's just old oil and grease and junk. Doesn't really seem like bare material or anything. So from what I've read, these are pretty stout engines. They're pretty tough. So I think we're good on that. I'll clean this thing up and then we'll stick it back in there. Something else I wanted to point out, this drain plug is 1 1/8" socket. It's a big old son of a gun. All right, like I said before, this has got like a canister style oil filter. So should be this 3/4 bolt right here. Take that off. This whole piece will come off. There should be an oil filter in there. All right, so I got this pulled out here where y'all can see it better. This is that canister I was talking about. And you can see it's just a big oil filter in there. I got a new one. Looks like there's some sludge at the bottom of that. So I'll clean this up real quick. Don't need that anymore, and I got a brand new one of these we're gonna stick in there. So up at the top on the engine side, you got a little rubber gasket that seals this surface right here. Got the old one off. It was super smushed and cracked up and brittle. Got a new one with that oil filter. Stick that on there and we'll bolt this back up. Well, I'll tell you what now, we are knocking stuff out today. Got the headlights all put on, fresh oil change. So I do have the front drive shaft I need to put on. That's not really a priority to drive this thing though. But the next thing I think I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go back to the rear axle, get those rear brakes unstuck, and that'll have us one step closer to driving this thing. These old drum brakes are notorious for getting stuck. They just sit for a long time and the shoes kind of rust to the drum. And they're a pain in the butt to get off. And you can throw a bunch of heat at them. You can beat on them with a hammer. And those typically do work. It is a lot of work though. And I've seen people beat on these till they break the drum. Well, so much for not breaking the drum. I've got a little trick though. I've done a bunch of these. I've had a bunch of vehicles come home with stuck brakes. And it usually works. So we'll try and knock this thing off and I'll show y'all my trick. Beating around on it, I can tell this thing's just really stuck to those shoes in there. You can kind of see the separation right here. So we did jar it a little bit. I don't think it's gonna come off just beating on it like that though. We'll end up breaking this drum. But right back here, that is where your wheel cylinder attaches to your backing plate, and that is your bleeder screw right there. These two bolts right here though, hold on that wheel cylinder. Your wheel cylinder, sitting right up in here, it's what spreads out and pushes them shoes out up into here. A trick that has worked a bunch of times for me is I'll actually take those two bolts off the back. That lets that wheel cylinder go. Of course, I'll unhook the brake line too. And it usually lets them shoes move enough that this thing will just come right off. Now, a lot of the times you do end up ripping the whole assembly out, or a lot of the springs and stuff will fall out with it. That's not too big of a deal for me because a lot of these old drum brake setups are pretty much the same. So I'm not worried about getting it back together. If you are, you know, you might keep going with the hammer and the heat and try and get it off in one go instead of ripping stuff apart like that. Though I know the wheel cylinder's got to be trash. I'm gonna guess the shoes are probably trash. It needs a full rebuild anyways. So I'm gonna knock them bolts out real quick and then we'll hit it on it again and we'll see if this thing will come off. So, quick little crazy story that happened. I had some Dana 44s for this out of Scout 2. I was thinking about doing an axle swap. I've changed my mind now. So I put them up for sale. So the guy calls me, he comes out to get them and stuff, and I noticed him stop on the way up to the barn and look at the Scout. Well, he gets up there and he tells me that this was his Scout when he was 16 years old, and he was like 33 now or something like that. And anyways, he said it was in great shape back then. It ran great. And the last time he saw it, his dad had like traded it to the junkyard where I got it from or something like that. I just thought that was so crazy, you know. The owner, when he was like 16, fixed this thing up. Maybe he did a bunch of the mods to it, I don't know. But I just thought that was crazy. All right, cross your fingers. Hopefully that worked. Well, so much for not breaking the drum. You can see all the junk that was in there. These are some of the worst shoes I've ever seen though. Look, there's like literally nothing left. And these pads were just totally seized up between the shoes and that drum. It was just not coming off. But that's one down and 3 to go. I'll be, if I didn't hit this thing twice, and look at this. It's already coming loose. I don't know why that one was so bad over there, but it almost looks like this one might have been replaced at some point. Still got a lot of paint on it. So maybe they redid this side last and never redid that side or something. So this one came off super easy. It looks like the shoes are in similar shape, but the brake pads hadn't really seized to the drum for whatever reason. It looks like somebody's been in this one not as long ago as they've serviced that one. What I ended up doing on this one though, and I can't believe this worked, this is your little brake adjuster, and there's a slot right back here. You can see that hole in your backing plate. I just stuck my screwdriver up in there and worked that wheel, and it tightened these shoes up, and that drum just slid right off. Super easy. I wish the other side had been that easy. I hate that I broke that drum, but this looks like a newer drum. I think that other one was pretty old. It'd probably been beat on a bunch anyways. I wonder if this nut in here is not tight. That's weird. So that's 2 down. Now we just got to knock out the front. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and run through these front ones real quick. Should just be a rehash of what we did in the back. If I see anything interesting, I'll show it to y'all. But once I get these unlocked, there should be a roller. I can move it out of the way and finally mow underneath it. And once I get this thing rolling, like I said last time, I've got some big plans for this. I'm going to tell y'all all about it. All right, so I wanted to show y'all that I'm not crazy. I took the bolts out of that wheel cylinder back there, and you can kind of see how it let them shoes float a little bit because that drum was not coming off. Once I got them bolts out, it just pulled off nice and easy. And honestly, these look way better than the rear ones did. So I'm probably gonna hit this with some brake clean. I might try and put these drums back on. I'm gonna leave the rear ones off for now. But if I can't put them back on, that's no big deal. So I'm just gonna leave the drums off for now, mainly because that adjuster out here is totally froze up. It's not like I'm gonna drive it this way. I just need to roll it back and forth. Actually, I might drive it a little bit this way, but we'll worry about that later. I'm gonna go ahead and get that other side done. Alrighty y'all, so everything should be loose now. I've got all the drums off the axles. So I guess all we can do now is just see what happens. I'll tell y'all what, if nothing else, we got a bunch done in this video. Oil change, got the headlights on, drive shafts on. Most importantly, this thing's a roller now. I can move it back and forth, get it in and out of the way. I can move it into better spots to work on it. But that also means that we're getting closer and closer to this thing running and driving on its own power. And that means the Junkyard Scout Will It Run series is kind of coming to an end. I'm thinking maybe 2 or 3 more episodes and I ought to be driving this thing around. Now, several of y'all have asked, am I gonna restore this? No, I'm not gonna restore it. It's just too rough, too rusty, too much Bondo. It doesn't make financial sense to restore this. Well, if I'm not gonna restore it, what am I gonna do with it? Well, I went to the forums, started reading what is the best upgrade for these Scout 800s. Well, I saw a lot about Scout 2 Dana 44 upgrades. And it's really just taking Scout 2 Dana 44s and swapping them under this. Which sounded like a great idea because then I get rid of this closed knuckle axle. I get rid of whatever Dana 44s in the rear. But the more I read about it, the more I realized that's not that great of an upgrade. You have to outboard the spring hangers on your Jeep to the outside of your frame rails to work with the Scout 2 Dana 44s. You also have to cut the outer C's on a Scout 2 Dana 44 axle and rotate them because they're made with zero caster. 1980, they had like 2 or 3 degrees, I think, in them. But otherwise, you gotta cut and turn them. It's a lot of work, and honestly, it's not that huge of an upgrade. Now, if I just wanted something to take to car shows and maybe do some light trail riding, like I built the 3B for, it'd be great, but I already have the 3B. I don't need a light duty trail rig. I need a heavy duty trail rig. Now, with that in mind, it sent me down another rabbit hole. And what's the first thing you think when you think heavy duty trail rig? 1 tons. So a Dana 60 front, a 14 bolt rear, or 2 Dana 60s, something like that. But that's what everybody does, right? And honestly, like a Dana 60 around here, a Kingpin, they've just got out of hand. You're talking, I don't know, $1,200–1,500 bucks. A Super Duty 60 from like a 05 up, 700 to 1,000 maybe. And then the 14 bolts, you know, 200 or 300 bucks. They made a ton of those. But everybody does tons, and I wanted to do something different. So I started researching, you know, what is the best alternative to 1 tons? And I watched Nate's video over at Dirt Lifestyle about do you need 1 tons and building the ultimate Dana 44 or the unbreakable Dana 44. And that got me thinking, you know, you can build some 3/4 ton axles super beefy, and even in some cases you'll see in his video that you can build them as strong or stronger than a Dana 60. Now I've got to hunt down these axles. What do these axles come in? Well, a 76 to 79 F150 or F250 has a high pinion Dana 44 front end with disc brakes, and that's what you're looking for. I'm going to go into greater detail about why I picked the high pinion 44 in a future video, because there's a lot to talk about there. For a rear axle, I'm going to use a Ford 9-inch. They're super easy to gear. There's tons of aftermarket support for them. And most importantly, it's 5 on 5.5. So I can use any of my Jeep wheels that I've already got and everything should work out fine. Now for the rest of the drivetrain, I'm thinking Chevy 4.3 liter. I've got a throttle body version sitting down in the basement, ready for a rebuild. For the transmission, you gotta go Ford T18. They've got great road manners. They got super low first gear. They're super beefy. And then to back all that up, a Dana 300 transfer case. But not just any Dana 300, a Dana 300 with 4-to-1 gears in it. I believe it's JB Conversions, has a super cool low max gear set for a Dana 300 that takes it down to a 4-to-1 T case. So combine that with the super low T18 first gear and then the 538s I'm gonna put in the axles, that torquey little 4.3, this should be an unstoppable trail rig. Now, of course, there's a bunch of other little things to talk about. We'll go more in depth in later videos, but that is the future plans for this. Let me know down in the comments what you think about my combination of parts. I know y'all would love to see this thing restored back to factory, but it just doesn't make sense for this build. And like I said, I've got my trail rig. I've got my Cars and Coffee Jeep. I need something hardcore I can take off road and thrash around. This is a rusty old Scout, but it's still super cool. It's still got a lot of life in it, and I want to build it into something I can use and enjoy. I appreciate y'all checking out this week's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see y'all next time.